Super Paper Mario is a weird game. We really haven't seen anything quite like it from the Mario franchise since, and I think for that reason it deserves to be remembered. Before I made this video, all I knew was that I wanted to talk about this game. First I tried to write like a retrospective sort of thing. That didn't work because I couldn't really come up with anything to say on this game that hadn't been said hundreds of times before. So then I tried to make an iceberg. Well, I did make an iceberg, but I realized that as a fan of this game, I wouldn't have been able to sit through the first 25 minutes because it was all things I already knew. And let's face it, if you're seeing this video, you're probably already a Super Paper Mario fan. So I considered my options, and I ultimately decided to saw off the bottom third of the iceberg and condense it into a sort of rapid fire, here's some weird stuff about this game kind of video. And that's where we are now. You'll probably still be acquainted with some of the things I talk about, but some of this stuff I haven't seen anyone talk about on YouTube. Also, huge thanks to GameEntis for the majority of the footage in the final part of the video, and another huge thank you to Mario Nova 64, who was able to give me some information about a topic later in the video. If you're interested in this video, then you'll most definitely like what's over there on both of those channels, so make sure to check them out. So without further ado, thank you for watching, and let's get started. The River Twigs is probably one of the most well-known things about Super Paper Mario. Watch any top 15 darkest moments in Mario games video, and you've got a good chance of seeing it on there. To me, what makes it so interesting is just how out of left field it is. Like sure, Mario and Luigi literally die and go to hell, which has some very dark implications by itself, but the whole time it's presented in a pretty standard Mario fashion, and overall, hell doesn't look that bad. It at least looks a whole lot more pleasant than Merle's mansion. But eventually you're informed that if you want to save Luigi's life, you've got to descend the depths of this underworld river. So you do that, and this happens. The disembodied skeletal hands grasping towards you aside, I think the main thing that makes this moment so unsettling is the music, if you can call it that. And if you heard what sounded like coherent speech, you're not alone. There is clearly some kind of recorded speech in this track, although what exactly is being said and the origin of said lines are unknown. While I'm not able to make out complete phrases myself, I can recognize that whatever is being said is in English, or at least parts of it. There's a video uploaded 8 years ago by a channel named Some Dude that does a really nice job of isolating the background voices in this track. With this video, you can clearly make out certain English phrases. I won't play that video here, but if you want to check it out, the link will be in the description. The Tribe of Darkness and Tribe of Ancients are to me one of the most interesting pieces of lore in this game. These two opposing groups were once one and the same, but split for an unknown reason. They both inhabited an unknown dimension, and their society seemed to have great knowledge of interdimensional travel. The Ancients created Flipside, with the Tribe of Darkness creating the opposing Flopside. Tympani and Merlin are both known to have Tribe of Ancients ancestry, however many more in Flipside most likely do as well. As for the Tribe of Darkness, the only two confirmed remaining members are Count Bleck and Norum, that being Merlin's doppelganger who lives in Flopside. I just find it so interesting that the writers and developers of this game decided to include so much hidden lore and history to the world. It almost makes me think that they had plans of continuing Super's story in a future installment. Especially with that final line before the credits from the game's narrator, "May we meet again in another time and place." In Merle's mansion, a grandfather clock can be found in the background. You probably won't even take the time to look at it, but if you do, you may notice that the clock will always display the real time, or at least whatever time it is on the Wii or Wii U that you're playing on. I honestly never noticed this myself. And while we're here in Merle's Mansion, let's take a look at a bit of a cryptid in the Paper Mario franchise, that being none other than Breadward. Breadward is a strange, almost mythical pixel in the Super Paper Mario fandom. He's never seen and is mentioned only once in the entirety of the game's story, during this moment in Chapter 2. How would somebody go about obtaining Breadward? I don't know why, but I know one thing is for certain. Breadward is real. He's out there in the world of Super Paper Mario, just like Luigi was found in Super Mario 64's files 24 years later. I believe that someday Breadward will be found. Many don't know that this game was originally planned to be a GameCube release, but was reworked for a Wii release later in development. Some GameCube assets still remain in the game's files, such as these button icons designed for the GameCube controller. Given how different Super is from the rest of the series, had it been a GameCube release as it was originally planned, it may have been treated as a sort of spin-off, either standing alone from the main series or starting an alternate Super Paper Mario series instead. Of course, that's highly speculatory, and I could probably do like 10 minutes worth of research into the development of Super and debunk this theory. But it's easy to say that had Super been released on the GameCube with another Paper Mario released sometime later in the Wii's lifespan, the Paper Mario series could have gone down a much different path. But I'm getting way off topic here. But then again, is it really a Paper Mario video if you don't go on some kind of tangent about how the series used to be? Anyways, did you know that Mr. L actually makes a brief appearance in the Thousand Year Door? In the very first cutscene of the game, Luigi goes outside the Mario residence to retrieve some mail delivered by Parakarry. He approaches the mailbox as normal, until right here, for a split second, Mr. L appears. For some reason, the L on Luigi's hat flips as he takes the mail, before he turns around and it goes back to normal. Given it actually does stay flipped backwards for a good bit of time, you'd think that this would be noticed on any kind of test runs of the game. But actually, I never really noticed this myself until researching for this video, so it's honestly understandable that the devs didn't catch it. And yeah, this is a Thousand Year Door glitch, not Super, but given I'm talking about the GameCube already, I felt that I should include it. So Bustovius. He's the dude back in Chapter 1 that gave Mario the power to flip into the third dimension. Mario is grateful for sure, but he's probably wondering why he woke up one day stuck in 2 dimensions, whereas in the last game he was able to move in full 3D. Anyways, as Bustovius is explaining to the player how to use this new ability, he says to use the A button to flip into 3D, before saying, "What is this A I speak of? I assure you that if we are being watched from another dimension, those beings will understand." So, Bustovius knows he's in a video game, I guess? On one hand, is this 100% just a joke? Yeah, probably. But on the other, it's there in the game. He said it himself, so it is canon that Bustovius has this meta knowledge. Good to know, I guess. Okay, this one's kinda crazy, but it just might be onto something. So it's actually a pretty popular thing at this point to point out the similarities between Toby Fox's games and Super Paper Mario. We've got some pretty similar characters, such as Francis and Alphys, two geeky reptilians, and Dementio and Flowey being two trickster-type characters who end up being the final boss. We've got multicolored hearts as sources of power being integral parts of the two games' narrative, and both games have a random dating minigame thrown in out of absolutely nowhere. But the parallels don't end with Undertale. Toby Fox's next project, Deltarune, has some more similarities. Dementio and Jevil, at least design-wise, are very similar. Both games even share a prophecy about light and darkness, but to be fair, that's actually a pretty common trope in video game stories. So maybe that's not the best example. Whether Toby was inspired or not, he's never confirmed, but to be honest, a lot of the things that people use as evidence that Toby Fox was inspired are really just vaguely similar concepts at most. I'm not claiming he was influenced in any way by Super, but regardless, the similarities are interesting even if they're probably just coincidence. This is probably going to be the most complicated topic yet, so get ready. In Flipside and Flopside, there are two bars, owned by Carson and Garson respectively. In these bars, for a small price, Carson and Garson will provide the player with general information. But one of the coolest things is the fact that all of Count Bleck's minions get backstories, like how Ochunks was apparently once the leader of a great army but was betrayed and defeated, then recruited by Bleck at his lowest point. Also, apparently Dimentio actually found Count Bleck and asked to join him first instead of being recruited like everyone else. And if we're to believe these stories, I guess Nastasia is like a shape-shifting bat? I'm not going to go through the whole story that he tells you, but if you look at how bats look in some other Mario games and then you look at Nastasia's color scheme, I mean, yeah, it's like the exact same thing. Like I said, these are just some of the things that you can hear about in this bar. And I'm really surprised that this stuff isn't like more of a big deal. I'm just gonna leave this with one last thing. In the distant past, there was a war between the Pixels and the Ancients. As in the tribe of Ancients that I mentioned earlier, the same family that Tippy belongs to. The Pixels led an uprising against the Ancients and initially won, but then a magician sort of just rises from the ashes and challenges the Pixel Queen to a battle. The Queen torments him with visions, but he's able to resist them because of his pixel, which allows him to see the truth. He eventually kills the Queen, but his pixel dies in the process. Also, it's specifically mentioned that everybody in the magician's family except for his son died. So, maybe his son is someone important? My mind immediately goes to Dimentio because he's really the only magician type character whose backstory we don't already know. As with pretty much any video game, Super Paper Mario has cut content within its game files. By the way, all the following information is coming from the cutting room floor. First, we've got some enemies that didn't quite make it into the game, such as Shy Guys in their various forms. There are these guys which I think were planned to be Yoldtown residents. Interestingly, the Underchomp, an enemy that normally doesn't exist in the overworld, instead contained within a turn-based battle, as an overworld model and animations. Of course, I'm just skimming through this stuff, but this last thing is really weird. We've got what looks to be the texture of a bush in 3 progressive stages of burning. Were we going to get some kind of biblical reference? That's honestly not far-fetched at all for this game. I mean, there's like actually a surprising amount of those. Finally, I've got one last thing that I wanted to talk about, and this one technically isn't even about Super Paper Mario. This pertains to some really interesting things found within the Korean release of the game. This release contains several extra levels which are notably different from Super's art style, and contain many of these really snazzy dressed cat guys just kinda hanging out. There's really not much that anyone knows about what these levels were doing here. My initial thoughts were that it could be some kind of development for a different game just using the same game engine that never ended up getting released, but given the Korean version released over 2 years after the Japanese version, kinda makes this hard to believe. It could also be just some of the game's actual developers just messing around. There really haven't been any developments on this since it was discovered around 2018, and unfortunately there probably won't be any. It's a shame because this game, whatever it was, looks pretty cool. But like I said, this one's probably going to go unsolved. And with that, I've got nothing more to talk about. If you stuck with me this far, I just want to say thank you again for watching. What this channel ends up becoming, I really have no idea. But I think that the best thing that a content creator can do is make something that they would enjoy if they were the viewer. So if all goes well, I'll just keep making videos on things that I'm interested in, and we'll see how things go from there. Talk to me in the comments about this video, what you liked and what you didn't like about it, and hopefully I'll see you all soon in another video.